Good morning.
Good morning.
So just a quick round of intros. I'm Dave Westcott, CEO of TransBlue, and this is Todd Chapman, Vice President of Franchise Development at the TransBlue Franchise Company. And we are happy to have you on our call. This is the entrepreneurial journey, and what we focus on is talking about how to build $1 million business. That's, everybody wants to be a millionaire. Everybody wants to, or maybe not everybody, but a lot of people, they want to achieve that dream in business. And so what we talk about here is the entrepreneurial journey with the preface on how we're going to make $1 million. How do we do that? And so one of the things that I learned actually along the way is that so many people focus on outsourcing. And what I've learned is you can't be everything to all people. A jack of all trades, a master of none would be, a line that I don't think you want to be good at. So what can we be great at? Well, it's interesting because our goal is to be great at outsourcing. And so what does that mean for us? Well, that means that we are going to utilize as many specialists as possible to make our business the very best that it can be. Now, in franchising, there is a lot of outsourcing that happens. One of the things that's outsourced on a pretty regular basis is bookkeeping, right? So in your experience, Todd, why don't you just share with us a little bit about what are some of the things that as a franchise business owner make? And by the way, this is all off the cuff. We don't script this. We don't practice for this. We don't rehearse this. We just do this off the cuff. So you get raw, you get natural. And my face has turned a dark shade of white. So if I look like Jason from Friday the 13th, it's because, something is going on with the light. It's not me.
Yeah, you got that. Amazing production, lights going on, but
I do. I have amazing production lights. Spent a fortune on production lights. I got lights all around me, and my face just went white.
But for the audience, Dave was at the beach last week, so the weekend for the Easter. So he's actually very tanned up. No, as far as you're exactly right. I mean, in franchising, outsourcing is a huge benefit to business owners, and I think for a lot of different reasons that you can go into. I think one is, as you mentioned, you're going into a business, and I don't care what industry it is, you're coming in with a background, as you're joining the franchise concept. And a lot of times as a franchisor, you're gonna vet out, some of the outsourcing partners that you come with, right? And it's whether it's bookkeeping and accounting, you obviously insurance, you've got, in retail and especially in the restaurant world, you might have suppliers of different kinds. Even in the service world, you've got those. And so I see it from benefits on two sides. One, as a franchise company, you're going to align yourself with good partners that are going to help you scale the business, right? But also for the franchisees, how do you help them scale up without them having to go, and you're saving that time and effort and money where they're going to have to go out and vet a lot of these partners as a business owner. So I think as a franchisor, and then for franchisees, the benefit of that is that, hey, we've vetted out some of these. So here's some good partners to align and help you build the business without you having to spend a lot of that time, right, finding it on your own. But even for those entrepreneurs who are not in franchising, I think, the value of scaling the business quickly. You mentioned, hey, do I got to be all things to all people? Do I got to be an expert in accounting and bookkeeping? Do I got to be an expert, with insurance? Or, again, these different potential suppliers that are out there? No, or like for us, we're obviously in general contracting, a huge benefit on us is that we do outsource and the subcontract all the work, right? So actually providing the service, we outsource and become an expert of that. So the benefit is that we don't have to be an expert in paving, decking, pools, whatever it may be. We find the experts, which gives us flexibility and scalability at the same time. So it helps ramp up that growth to, $1 million business or beyond, however you want to build there, rather than, if you're to self-perform that work, you're going to be limited, obviously, I think on the type of projects that you could do in our world, but also limited on the volume and the scalability. So I think there's tremendous value to outsourcing, depending on the business, of course.
Yeah, that's good insight. One of the biggest challenges that we see just in the franchising is that, franchisees are good at running their business. They're good at being in the field. They're good at, managing the sales portion. They're good at those aspects, but where they fall short internally initially is with finances and bookkeeping, right? And so, one of the things that we urge any new business or any new franchisee or any new entrepreneur is to really focus on that bookkeeping aspect, because it's so easy to get your books out of line, right? It's so easy to get your books missed. And so you really want to have that bookkeeping service, because what happens if you don't? You can have, things like, hey, we didn't set aside enough money for taxes, right? The last thing that we want to do is be battling Uncle Sam, right? We don't want to be having a battle with the government over taxes, because that's a surefire way to put yourself out of business, right? We want to have good financial reporting so that we can understand, are we profitable? Where do we need to make changes? Do we need more sales in these segments? And really managing our books. Do we have a good, clean set of books that we can show a bank for a loan, right? Are we loanable? Because if you want to scale your business, if you want to grow your business, outside capital really helps you be able to do that. But without good financials, without good bookkeeping, you can't really do that. So that's one of the things that we push hard on. And you've been in franchising a long time. What do you see with the bookkeeping specifically?
Yeah, I think for bookkeeping, you mentioned it is the clean data, right? Because it's funny enough, I was talking to a potential partner that we're vetting out right now, and one of the things that they work closely on is for financial dashboards and providing KPIs on a quick reporting, right? And they work closely. I mean, some of the biggest brands out there in the franchise world, and also small businesses. I mean, hundreds of brands out there that they work with. And he said, what's interesting, he gave me a statistic of 70 to 80% of business owners do not have a financial acumen to run a small business. And that's working with many bookkeeping services and accounting, as well as with franchisors and large brands, multi-brand type concepts. And so we were talking about that, and he said, listen, these dashboards I can create and look at these KPIs that are customized and visually just amazing for business owners, so they can get a pulse of budget to actuals, or, where am I on track for the year, and month over month data trends, right? And these are great. But he said at the end of the day, if the information being set, whether it's whatever the accounting platform you're using, QuickBooks Online or whatnot, that data needs to be clean to be able to trust it, the information that's going to be put in these dashboards, right? So I think it's very valuable, and also I think the time and just the experience that most of the franchisees coming in any concept, whether they've had experience in it or not, is that bookkeeping is probably one of the most common pitfalls of running a sound business is that they don't have that real knowledge. So what I've seen is it's such a minimal investment in the long run, for you to make the sound business decisions. Otherwise, how do you understand if you want to outsource here, or even hire in-house and build your team, or buy another truck? How do you plan for that? But if you're not getting the clean financial data and able to make those decisions, it's hit or miss. Otherwise, one is, are we tracking it consistently? And so I think, giving that to the experts, and a good partner and a good bookkeeping service too will also help train you, right? And help you understand. So not that you can be necessarily an expert to take it over, but who knows, down the road you might choose to do that. Down at that time, after a while, maybe you choose to keep it in-house and do it yourself. But and I think that's a good partner that will help educate you along the way, along with that's bookkeeping, but also an accountant or a CPA, down the road as you scale up.
So it's interesting that, we're talking about outsourcing. And one of the things I learned a long time ago was that a lot of your major companies, a lot of companies across, the nations outsource. Just one major company that we can look at as kind of an example is Boeing. Pretty much every single thing that Boeing puts on is outsourced, right? Puts on a plane is outsourced. They're outsourcing it in one part of the country or another. So when we're looking at that, what we begin to see is that outsourcing is one of those things that a lot of companies do. Now, I'll tell you that why did I start outsourcing? So I started outsourcing in probably 2011. I started dabbling with it. And I'll tell you the reason why. So in 2011, something in that effect, I had around 115 guys during peak season and about 28 trucks on the road doing landscaping maintenance. I had like 6 landscaping maintenance trucks. I had 3 cleanup crews. I had remodel crews. I had large landscape installation crews. So, a myriad of different services that we were providing. And what I said was, okay, what are all of the challenges in business? What are the challenges with scaling? Well, one of the challenges was just equipment, just keeping up with the equipment, because the guys take the equipment out into the field and they just bang it up. I don't care who you are, they start banging it up. So early on, I looked at the lawnmower shop, and this is, maybe 15 years ago. And I said, oh my gosh, we spent $26,000 this year at the lawnmower shop. And I said, oh, that is crazy. That's probably 2006 or something like that. And so I said, okay, it's time to hire a full-time mechanic. So then I hire a full-time mechanic, and I'm paying him $25-30 an hour back then. And so then it's like, okay, now we need a second full-time mechanic. And now we need an entire fleet shop so that we can pull 2 trucks in at once and have them worked on and fix equipment in an equipment bay on the side. And we got to have huge storage for all of our mowers and equipment and tractors. And by the time you look at it, I've got this huge warehouse. And I'm spending tons of money on that, right? And so I'm looking at the equipment, just the cost of the equipment. And then I'm buying new equipment. And then the guys take it out. And let's say I go buy an $8,000 Skag mower, and boom, they go and they hit a big rock in a field and they kill the mower. Has that ever happened? So, like, at the end of the day, equipment had a huge cost. And then the cost of labor, right? Finding labor. Finding labor is so hard. I mean, people say it was hard then, hard now. It's always hard to find labor. And it's always hard to find labor when you're paying for some of the least paid for jobs in the marketplace, right? Landscaping maintenance, like pretty much anybody can put on a pair of boots and landscape, right? Janitorial, pretty much anybody can do janitorial cleaning. Pretty much anybody can work at a McDonald's or a Taco Bell, So these are entry-level jobs. And so what we find is that it becomes very hard to source labor. I mean, you were at US Lawns for a long time, and your guys and your franchisees there, finding labor was difficult, wasn't it?
Yeah, extremely. And I think, you mentioned that it also the seasonality of that business, right? In certain markets, especially, in those seasonal areas, you're staffing up hard around this time of year, or probably a little bit, previous to this season, and coming into the spring, and, you staff up a ton, and, there's obviously certain ways to do that. And some people take advantage of like H-2B programs and things like that, where they've got seasonal work coming in, but it's, again, you're talking about this influx, and then at the end of the season, you're letting go of everybody, and then you're kind of cycling through that as well. And that could be whether you're hiring in-house or an H-2B program or not, but it's that fluctuation and seasonality that can occur. And I think it's again the time of hiring, the cost, and in that world too, like you mentioned. I mean, you're dealing with it's just a turnstile of labor. That was always one of the biggest challenges in that business. Is number one. And I think in most businesses, but number one challenge that every one of the franchisees would share is, again, when you come into meetings or conferences, is labor, number one, right? Just because of you're also competing against people in their markets. I mean, we always joke that, especially in the residential space, you're competing with the 12-year-old down the street, right? In some ways where, they come down and want to cut for $20, a week. So, just that the competitive balance and then that turnover was always great in that world.
It's huge, right? So,
Yep.
So we know that, so we've talked about equipment, we've talked about labor. Those are 2 big reasons. So next, you've got just amongst that group of people, it can be difficult to find drivers. Like my biggest problem was less finding laborers. It was more finding drivers who had driver's license. To be perfectly honest, guys who could get behind the truck and actually drive the trucks. And sometimes we would just have to hire people because they had a license, and we'd have to put them on a crew, even if they were going to be less productive. So what I looked at was look at all of the shop that I needed to have. I needed to have this massive shop. And then look at all of the labor that I needed to have. 115 guys, 28 trucks, constantly repairing, constantly fixing, constantly buying new equipment, constantly looking to do that, opening multiple locations to be able to scale up and conquer more areas. And so what I did was I did an experiment. It's kind of a funny experiment, but I said, listen, Team X, you're going to run our entire company of 115 people, and we're going to work as hard as we can to make it as profitable as possible. You're going to manage all the maintenance, all the construction. You're going to do everything. And then I'm going to work with one guy on my team, and all I'm going to do every single day is sell jobs and subcontract them. That's all I'm going to do. Doesn't matter what comes in. Anything that I sell gets subcontracted. I'm going to personally do it. I've got one guy who's going to work with me on my team of 115 people, and we're going to work together, and everybody else is going to focus on executing the jobs the way that we normally did it. And so what happened? Well, at the end of the year, I made more money outsourcing than I did self-performing. And we had a good self-performed thing. It wasn't bad. In fact, there was a time when I thought, man, I've got more money than I'll ever know what to do with. And the truth of the matter was, when I moved to an outsourcing model, guess what? My life got easier. I don't care who you are to this day. I don't care how big your business is. I don't care how much you dog on, subcontractors or whatnot. I don't care if, how much you self-perform. Life is easier without employees. I want to say that again. Life is easier without employees. And so you change the type of employee that you have. And so by outsourcing, I bring a different kind of project manager on, right? Yeah, we're still a blue collar business, but I've got more white collar staff than I do blue collar. And I'm telling you, there's less sick days. There's less people who leave for $1. You can focus more on building culture. You can focus more on building a business. And what I found in that experiment was that I actually enjoyed what I did. And how did I make more profit? Well, it was simple, because if a paving job came in through a sub company that we set up, it was, there's some cool stuff that we did there. But what happened was, paving job comes in. Okay, cool. I go out and bid it. It's $300K. I can sub that at whatever I want. I get the best price possible. And so I'm able to make so much more money. And so one of the things that we teach at the TransBlue franchise company is outsourcing, right? It's where we hang our hat. We are not interested in self-performing. I am not interested in growing my business by hiring a bunch of laborers and buying a bunch of equipment. I'm asset and labor light. Guess what? If economic downturn comes along, what happens?
Got to cut staff. Yeah. if you're not, if you're self-performing though, you got to make those tough decisions, right? In your business, right? To cut expenses, and labor is usually the biggest one.
Labor is an absolute bullet to the head. I mean, it really is. Like, I love the guys. I love joking around with the guys in the field. I love hanging out with them. I love the barbecues. I love hiring people. I love building the empire and the castle. But at the end of the day, it doesn't put profit in your pocket. And even the guys that you see doing it well, they're still struggling. They're still losing accounts. They're still having so many backlog issues, because it all comes down to people. And I love people, but to grow a business, you've got to nurture people. You've got to grow people. You've got to grow people on culture. I love Todd Chapman being a part of our business. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. I'm not just saying that because he's on the call. I would tell it to him if he wasn't on the call. But what I love about Todd is it's all about culture. So our belief system at TransBlue is God, family, then business, right? Big part of who we are. And so Todd worked at US Lawns, which was a part of Brightview. I have to imagine that working at Brightview is a much or part of USL or US Lawns or whatever, Brightview, that's a much bigger catch than working at little old TransBlue, right? They've got a sweet benefits package. You've got the corporate jet. You've got the,
I never made it to that level, but
yeah. Okay.
But I was in the final four.
That's not what you said in the interview. No, I'm just kidding. But you know what the thing was? He was in Florida and he came to Washington. But I mean, I'll let him answer for himself. But a lot of that is culture, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I've shared it before. I believe on some of these calls too. But it's, I think at the end of the day, as you're building culture, and I think you can extend that to the outsource too, right? That's those are an extension. When you're working with different partners, whether it's subcontractor or a supplier, they're an extension of your brand as well. But for me, it was obviously the values that you upheld, not only obviously personally, but that's the foundation of the business was God, family, and then business, right? And obviously the core values of the company was attractive. And again, going back to that one of the first calls, and you shared the vision of the company was obviously the give back and what you wanted to accomplish in the vision for the company. And a lot of times, it's growing a profitable business, and we can't give back. We can't share that and make an impact there unless it's profitable business and a growing business. So that's the obviously going to be a result of that, but that give back. And I just found that great. Nothing against obviously, amazing company in Brightview. They're,
amazing.
Largest company out there, and US Lawns, obviously great company too.
Yeah.
But I think what attracted me here to TransBlue and what is that, what's the purpose? What's that greater reason that you want to strive for. Right. So,
yep.
And that's what brought me and attracted me here, and that's culture. And obviously, that's who you want to align yourselves with, which goes to outsourcing too, right? I think that kind of comes hand in hand, and bringing it back there is, aligning yourself with good partners who obviously believe in your vision for the company. And I think in subcontracting and as well as bringing on the purchasing partners that you have, I think they got to believe in that vision as well. And so that's an extension of the culture and the brand loyalty.
So let's talk about that in context with outsourcing. One, just to enumerate on it, the goal, the vision for the company is to put $100 million a year into charity and noble causes, 90% of which are Christian in nature, because I'm a Christian guy. But so that's kind of the mission and the goal. But beside that, let's look at so our business is in a small town, Monroe, right? We're just in a small little suburb of Seattle, and this is kind of where we hang our hat. This is where we hang our hat. And so we've got a Denny's. And Denny's is, one of two breakfast places in the entire town of 16,000 people. Denny's closed. Denny's was always busy. It was always packed. So, but why did Denny's close? Denny's closed because they couldn't find the labor to do the work. Right? They couldn't staff the restaurant. It's not that the restaurant wasn't busy. It's not that there wasn't a demand for people. They could not staff the restaurant. And how many restaurant concepts do you see? How many businesses do you see that cannot staff to the customer's need? And how much of that comes back to culture? How much of that comes back to the place where you decide to work? What we do every day, like at work, I'm going to spend more time at work than I am going to spend with my family. Right? That's just the given truth. I love my family. We're up early in the morning. The kids are off to school. I'm off to work. We get home at the end of the day. Maybe we go to a couple of sports activities. We have a couple hours at night to hang out, and then we go to bed. In between getting up and going to work, and then getting home, eating dinner, and going to bed, we've got 6 hours maybe between those two time periods to spend with our family. So it's very minimal. So what we want to do is focus on culture. We want to focus on culture. Now, how do we do that? Part of that is going to be in outsourcing, like we talked about, outsourcing bookkeeping. Look at everything that you can do. Marketing. Can you outsource your marketing? Can you hire a professional at a better cost to do it better? And that's what we're really looking at. If I'm looking at an electrical project, I know how to bid an electrical project. I know how to do an electrical job. But am I the best guy to do the electrical work? Is it good for me to go out there and put an ad out on Indeed and then hire an electrician and then buy a truck and then get all the materials and then source it all and then go and put it in and deal with the customer and all these things? Or is it easier for me to pick up the phone and call Jack's Electric Service and say, hey, Jack, this is the cost I got for the job. Is this something you're interested in? Yeah, I'll do it. Okay, I'll be there tomorrow and I'll knock it out of the park. That's a game changer right there, because now I didn't have to hire the expertise, put the expertise on, and then continue to hire to keep that person on my books. Right? They're not there every day. They're only there when I need them. And so it gives me this great flexibility in business. Like I can literally run my business from anywhere I want in the US or Canada or wherever there's internet, you know? Like literally, I can do that with the power of outsourcing. The power of outsourcing allows me to be anywhere in any place in any market, right? Like I can literally outsource in Kentucky. I can outsource in Louisiana. I can outsource in Canada. I can outsource in New Mexico. I can outsource in Puerto Rico. I can outsource in Guam. By the way, these are all places we've outsourced, right? Every single one of those places we've done business. High level of business for customers that need our help. So what I learned was that outsourcing gave me a business that I loved. Because you know what keeps me up at night? Number one thing, keep you up at night as a business owner, payroll. How am I going to make payroll? How am I going to make payroll? How am I going to make payroll? Oh my gosh, payroll's coming. Got to pay the guys. What's next? How am I going to pay the rent? Got to pay the rent. And at the end of the day, as an owner, how many owners are sitting there and they're like, well, at least I kept the business going. I paid my bills. I didn't make any money, but at least I kept the business going. Right? That's a hard way to live. And in franchising, Todd, with all your experiences, how many franchise, even great concepts, how many of those owners just work for a salary, maybe a less of a salary than they'd even have having a job?
Yeah, I mean, and quite a bit, right? I mean, even you look at some of the biggest brands out there, and you pull the top 200 list, and there's those in the top 10, and if do the research, but even Subway, right? They'll say you need to own multiple Subways, right? If you look at the average, value of those, and some of those large ones out there, the largest brands that are out there, you're gonna experience that. And I think at the end of the day, I mean, that you see, I was talking yesterday, I won't mention the name of the concept, but I got my haircut finally. It was a little overdue last night, and it was an independent, locally owned business right here in Monroe, and they were talking about some of the hairstylists came from a franchise concept, a pretty large brand, and they were talking about just how some of those are closing in the area and some of the effects that they're having. You mentioned some of the obviously with Denny's here locally, but just some of the other this brand in particular, they were mentioning that a lot of these stylists came from there because it was closing down, and a lot of it was just they couldn't afford it. And yeah, I mean, obviously pandemic had an impact there too, so for them it was, again, you see these challenges that come in the business, right? And it keeps them up at night. I mean, a lot of different franchises, multiple concepts. I mean, you hear the challenges there. It's very limited at the end of the day. And the biggest factor is scalability, right? I mean, you even look at like a concept like a sandwich shop or some of those, it's in the restaurant world, very, very low margins so you need to own multiple, you have to invest in quite a bit to get to the area as the investor, as the true business owner to the financial place that you want to be, right? Because there's just, the margins are so slim. And a lot of that has to do with number one expense, which is the payroll. Followed by, depending on marketing, may or may not be next, depending on what type of business it is.
So here's a couple of takeaways, and here's some numbers. I'm going to share some numbers with you. This is from Franchise Direct. Okay, so Franchise Direct did a survey involving 28,500 franchise owners. The average pre-tax annual income of franchise owners was $80,000, approximately $80,000. When they broke that down, what they found was that 51% of franchise owners made less than $50,000 a year. $50,000 a year is $25 an hour. This is the owner of the business. This is the man or the woman carrying all of the responsibility, all of the risk, all of the stress, all of the 80-hour work weeks, all of the pain. And they're making less than 51% make less than $50,000 a year, and only 7% made over $250,000. And I want you to think about that, because these are franchise owners. These are the people who own Subways and McDonald's and fruit and smoothie stands and US Lawns and Puro Cleans and all sorts of them. Mosquito Joes. I'm not saying it, Trans Blues, whatever. This is everybody all combined. This is the mix. And so what you look at and what Todd said is so vital to your business: payroll. So if you can take anything from this call, one, how do you reduce payroll? Look at your business right now. What can you outsource that reduces payroll? Let me give you something. Let me give you a tip. And shout out to David Nielsen, who's an EO, Entrepreneurs Organization mate of mine, who owns a company called Doxa. And they outsource labor in the Philippines. And half of our staff is outsourced labor in the Philippines. Right? We get a great return on investment by outsourcing labor in the Philippines. It's a great cause for our business. So even the work that we do on a daily basis, we're looking at outsourcing it. Anything that we can do that we can put in the hands of an expert or a professional to manage on our behalf is what we are going to do. It doesn't mean that we want to take jobs away from American guys. We don't want to do any of that. But what we're doing it is looking at building a profitable business. As a business owner, we have to deal with extreme taxes, right? Overtaxation, in my opinion. We have to deal with a government that is not favorable for the small business owner, right? There's so many regulations, so many hurdles to jump through, so many things that they are always taxing us for. So it's not easy to do that. We get hit with more and more expenses. Right? And then we've got all of the employment issues. Key guy doesn't show up for work. Who's picking it up? I love Taco Del Mar. It's one of my favorite places. It's a little burrito restaurant. We go to the same place every Tuesday night for dinner at Taco Del Mar, and the franchise owner runs the shop. She says, buying the franchise was the worst decision of my life. Oh, yeah? Why is that? Well, because I can't even pay the people $25 an hour to come in here and work. People won't even work for $25 an hour. And I'm like, really? She's like, yeah, people will not work for $25 an hour. So she says, I work every single day, 9 a.m. till 10 p.m., 7 days a week. That's my life. I cannot get out of it. I've seen her in there break down in tears. She works so much. But the lady don't quit. She's made of nails or something. So you think about that. The 51% make $50,000 or less, and she can't even hire somebody for $25,000. That's tough. So we got a couple of questions here. Amit, thank you for joining the call, and love to have you here. Outsourcing can raise concerns about maintaining the high quality standards that your organization values while still obtaining the best possible price. It is important to consider how effectively to manage these challenges, and how can your organization ensure that the work is not compromised and done at a high level. What's the perfect balance? And I think this comes down to knowing your client, right? And I think this comes down to being able to leverage your buying power and buying and working a business. I like to explain it like this. If I go to 7-Eleven and I buy a bag of chips, what am I going to pay for a bag of chips at 7-Eleven? I'm going to pay like $2.59, something like that. And if I go over to Costco and I want an entire box of, chips, what am I going to pay? $4.50 for 50 bags? whatever it is, 25 bags. I don't know. That's what it looks like. So what happens is we become really powerful in a market, because whereas we might pick up, let's say, a Walmart in Chicago, Illinois, well, maybe we've got a Pizza Hut in Chicago, Illinois, and maybe we've got a Jiffy Lube in Chicago, Illinois, and maybe we've got a Wells Fargo in Chicago, Illinois, and maybe we've got a Bank of America in Chicago, Illinois, and maybe, we've got some CBRE locations. Now, we don't have this huge office and this huge footprint, but now we've got some of the biggest Fortune 500 names on the, in North America in those markets. And so those are highly sought after contracts. Those are highly sought after dollars. Those are clients who pay their bills. Those are clients who do that. And so when you go to a local contractor in that market, it's not saying that every single one is the best, but a lot of it comes with verification. And we do a lot of verifying the subcontractors, right? W-9. Can they fill out the paperwork correctly? Can they complete an MSA, master service agreement? Do they have the proper insurance? We check references. So we do a lot of things on the back end that ensure that we're working with the best folks. And then it all comes down to my favorite thing, Todd, which is set the expectation, right?
Yep.
So the number one reason that these people fail in any kind of outsourcing is because the expectation isn't set.
And the communication.
Communication.
And building a relationship. I mean, something that you've talked about for years, and we obviously coach on the franchise side, is building a relationship with our subcontractors, and those contractors, and obviously you have stories where you've even taken them to events, right? And amazing stories like that, and building, guys that would fight for you. And, essentially, I mean, obviously in our model, we have replaced that frontline worker, right? With our contracting network. So continue to communicate well, take care of this person, and what we call the VIP promise, very important partner, right, in our business. And so, setting what the expectation starts there, but then continue to follow through and take care of those people.
It's true. And like I said, you set the expectation, and that comes down to communication. But the truth of the matter is that if we were all playing Monopoly, and I'm sure everybody on this call has played Monopoly, and if Todd and I are playing Monopoly and, we're playing the game, and then all of a sudden I tell Todd, hey, man, you don't get to collect $200 when you pass go. He's going to quit. He's probably going to flip the table over and say, you lying, cheating son of a no good, rancid dog, whatever, right? We're going to have an argument. And so what we want to do is we want to set the rules by which we play the game up front. And if we set the rules and the expectation, in my experience, 99% of your subcontractors are going to exceed your expectations when they know the rules by which we play the game. And it comes down to what Todd said, which is communication. If we don't deliver good communication, if we don't communicate that expectation to the client or to the subcontractor, and then later on we're like, hey, you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do this, we set them in a situation where they can't succeed and they will fail. So it all comes down to communication. It all comes down to setting the expectation. Dr. Carey on the call, thank you very much for the comment. Awesome content. Thank you that. Brett Boggs, thank you for joining the call. Appreciate that. And Pastor Prasad, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for joining in and watching. Appreciate having you guys on the call today. Todd, any final thoughts before we bring this in for a closing?
No, I think, again, I would say, depending on the business, I mean, outsourcing may not be the right fit for everybody. However, I think it offers, as we talked about here, the scalability factor, bringing in experts in their field, understand your limitations in your business, especially if you're just starting out, in your business, that's a great way to help scale up and find the experts in those areas that you fall short.
Yeah, that's great stuff. And outsourcing doesn't have to be your whole business. It can be as simple as a virtual assistant. It can be as simple as a bookkeeper. It can be as simple as, a car service. Like, there's many different things that you can outsource that can help reduce your bottom line expenses, that can help you do your job faster. If I'm sitting here trying to build a website, but there's a local website guy who will build a website for $1,000. We have a guy, his name is Dave Cuff, does an awesome job for us, charges $1,000 a website, whatever. That's a great way to get started. I will spend that just trying to figure out how to purchase everything that I need to do to make the website. The website will look like garbage. So just know where to outsource, know where to grow your business. Anyways, like I said, we're bringing this in for a landing. Great call. Awesome to have you on with with me as always, Todd Chapman. You're always a pleasure. This is the entrepreneurial journey. If you want to build that $1 million business, look at the things that you can do in your business that really can outsourcing, whether it be bookkeeping, a virtual assistant, labor, services, so on and so forth. Look for the best. And when your people deliver the best, you'll get those raving reviews and you'll get those clients that just come back time after time again. If this was helpful, give it a share, give it a like, post on the comments. We love having you with us. And follow me on Facebook, David Westcott. Follow me on LinkedIn, David Westcott. And this Todd Chapman, follow me on LinkedIn. Check us out. We love being here. And if there's any content you'd love to hear from, shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And I'd love to chat about something you're interested in. Thank you so much and have a great day.